Alexandria. I was saying today was one of those days when I was on social media, and my brain was all over the place. I'm really happy to be here, and
I'm happy you're here.
yeah, and reading your book. I really enjoyed reading that, but it was also really funny because so many of the poems that you read were poems that I referenced. So,
Oh, good. I asked her to interview me because I respond well to questions most of the time, and I have no idea what she's going to ask me. So, come along on the ride.
well, the first poem is called Mother Wound of a Wolf Daughter. A mother wound is, there's still wound, but then it's also about emotional, cultural trauma. And so I thought it was really interesting to read it in the context of you, but then also I was just thinking about this, is what do you do when you belong to a mother whose foot is caught in a trap and she swears that this is freedom? So thinking about you and your mother, but then also America. Do you have thoughts on that?
I have many thoughts on that. It's been interesting to me to look back at my parents and the life that they chose and that parallel route that is the American dream. So I was taught something my entire life. I was told it was true. I was told everyone who would tell me that it was untrue was the one who was wrong. So I was kind of insulated against asking any questions. And I find that, because I grew up in a very politically conservative household as well, it's a parallel track. It's exactly the same thing. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, it does. It does. Actually, can you talk about, so I don't know, did I tell you this? I might have told you this, that, so I went to a religious reform school, right? And during the pandemic, I got in a kind of a dark space where I was interviewing people from other reform schools, other religious reform schools, and I actually, the worst was when I started interviewing people from IFB. So, good Lord, I'm just gonna tell you, I thought my school was bad, and you could read about my school online, but IFB schools are just like, can you contextualize IFB? Because I don't, like, how many people here know what IFB is? Anyone? Okay, I can tell you this is the one fact I can tell you. I'll tell you a couple. It was started by Lester Roloff, right? And, well, so further back, but IFB, in the 56, they split from the Southern Baptists because they weren't conservative enough. If that tells you. So can you tell us some more about IFB?
It stands for Independent Fundamentalist Baptists, and so essentially, Deirdre said, the Southern Baptist Convention is too liberal. Independent stands for independent. They don't want a governing board. They don't want any accountability. So each congregation is sort of its own thing, which means you're going to find a lot of variation across the IFB cosmos, and there isn't, the thing that is consistent is control. The desire to control everything and everybody, and as sort of digging themselves into a hole and putting their head in it like an ostrich. But the fundamentalist part of it is a very specific way of reading the Bible and teaching their adherents that only their own interpretation, meaning the IFB's interpretation, is correct, which is like wildly arrogant. It's amazing that when you're in it, you can't recognize what you're in because it's bizarre. You get outside of it and you look back in and you go, oh my God, how did I not know how messed up this was? But you don't have contact with the outside world. That's why I was talking earlier about how they isolate like the Amish. They really do. They are they lean heavily on what they call the doctrine of separation. And that is this idea that you are to be in the world, but barely, and not of it. And so you can be corrupted by what is outside of your own circle. And as you can imagine, that is a perfect breeding ground for misogyny, racism, xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia, every single kind of deciding that someone else's humanity is incompatible with your own belief system. As far as on a personal level, they believe that fathers are the head of the household and pastors are who the fathers answer to, and they control what you wear and what you watch, if you watch anything, what you listen to. I had a CD player inside a radio that my mom had given me because I was only allowed to listen to very specific kinds of music, and when they caught me listening to the radio, they took the whole thing away. So it's the granular level of control that they know they need in order to keep you where you are is really intense. So what you wear, how you speak, who you speak to, all of it is controlled.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of takes us back to that 10-word poem. We could go, oh my gosh, we could go really dark and deep. I'm going to stop. I don't want to do that to people. But I loved when in the book of Judges, you have that question about the poem of the book of Judges, why God let the Israelite men throw away their wives. And then later on in the poem, you say, some knowings unfurl slow like a silken dawn. Hunger can be a beautiful thing. Was there a moment? Do you remember the initial moment where you had questions?
I think the short answer is probably no, because growing up when I was in my mid-teens, late teens, very early 20s, I was hungry all the time, and I wanted out. I knew I wanted out, but I was also afraid to get out, and there was actually no way that I could personally conceive of getting out because I didn't know anybody outside. There was no way to make that a reality. And then fast forward a little bit, when I was 21, I actually converted officially for myself because there's nowhere to go. you gotta sign up. And I did, and I went all in. And it was that experience of putting what I had been taught to the test and seeing how shaky it was and how it didn't hold up under even just my own emotional weight and pressure. And it was at the height of trying to live really aligned with that doctrine and in tune with what I had been told. And realizing it was not enough for me and hating myself for that. Hating myself for it not being enough. And that was kind of when the keys started turning. And it was something's off. Something's not working.
You didn't grow up that far away from here, right?
No. I grew up in Barrow County.
Right.
Yeah, this stuff is everywhere.
Right. That's what's really important, I think, for people to understand. We have people all around us that are trapped like this, but they're just walking around Walmart or whatever, you know?
Yeah, and you can't, that's the other thing, is you can't rescue people out of that. They have to want to get out. That's really unfortunate. But friendship is what saved my life. Because when I started being a little more willing to bear other ideologies of people that I was beginning to get to know, and I got to know the people, that's when everything changed. And there's more here than meets the eye.
However, as much as we write about really heavy themes, there's also a really hopeful element to your work. You know, that poem 17, I love that, where you ended with, and now is now, and I choose to rebel, I'm here, right? Or in the tender and untethered, where you got this, hope that nothing bad should happen to anyone, Can you talk about that, about writing towards hope, even in desperate times? Or just writing towards beauty, or just how, I think that's what's so beautiful about your work is how you bring in the natural world, or you bring in those moments that keep it from just being completely overpowering, right? Like the bad place. Yeah.
So, I had a thought and then it went away. The idea of writing towards hope. Well, I mean, writing is something I did my entire life to cope. Cope. That's the word. I have come to the conclusion, currently anyway, that every single belief that I take on is a coping mechanism, because we don't actually know anything. We're just trying our best with what we have to build frameworks that make sense to us. And so when I finally made peace with the idea that you don't have to be right, you just have to survive, and you just have to survive in a way, hopefully, that makes you happy and safe and makes the people around you happy and safe. That is literally all you gotta do. And I had to write myself into that. I write myself in and out of that place all the time. I have stuff on my hard drive that nobody will ever see and nobody should ever see because I wrote it without any hope at all. And yet, that is important too, because if you keep hiding from the hopelessness, it will eat you. It will eat you alive. You have to face it. And I think that the facing the hopelessness is where the hope actually eventually works its way through, out into you.
Yeah. But definitely also with you. So let's say part 2 of that is, and this is the last question.
You've got great questions.
Well, no, we could do more later, but can you talk about the natural world, bringing the natural world into that? Because again, I think we all, I got stuck in this room full of people that were very online last week, and it was very, whoa, because if you're very online, it's a really scary world, but then when you have nature, can you talk about that? Bringing nature in.
Yeah, when I started thinking about spirituality through more of a feminine lens, and I don't mean to be gendered when I use feminine, I simply mean an energy of not having to push and consume and control all the time. I made friends with a lot of people who understand the cycles and the seasons far more than I ever will, but they got me interested in understanding that. And as I got older, number one, and as I began to wrestle with that hopelessness, being able to see that even though nature itself is often cruel and heavy and destructive and corrosive and decomposes, and there's a darkness there, and that it never stays the same, that it is always changing. My friend Molly says it doesn't have to be better, it just has to be different sometimes. And I feel like that's, yes, clap it up. I feel like that's what I found in nature, was recognizing that, sure, there are all these beautiful lessons from animals and plants, and I love to find meaning in that because it feels like it connects me to something somewhere somehow. And it allows me to experience the darkness as a friend and not as an enemy, because the cycle does not stop. I have some lines in the book somewhere about that. The cycle doesn't stop. It's going to keep going, whether we're here or not. And I find a lot of comfort in that sometimes. I find a lot of grief in that because I want to be here for that sometimes. But I also find a lot of comfort in the fact that I don't have to do anything about that. It's going to keep going. That is not my weight to carry. And there's a rest in that sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I Diane, this is a very beautiful book of poems, and I'm really proud of you.